So every year, we get India's union budget, right? It's the big economic game plan. But the 2026 budget, this one's different. It's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about a whole new way of thinking, a total rethink of the relationship between the government, its people, and the economy. Let's get into what makes this one a real game changer. Okay, check this out. The official theme is action over ambivalence, reform over rhetoric, people over populism. Now, that's not just a fancy slogan. It's the core idea, the DNA of this whole budget. It's basically saying, hey, we're done with temporary fixes and empty talk. This is all about making real, long-term changes. It's a pretty bold mission statement, and it really sets the stage for a story of transformation. Right. So, for anyone who's maybe not super familiar with this, let's do a quick one-on-one. What is the union budget? Think of it like the country's annual financial checkup, and its plan for the future, all rolled into one. It lays out exactly where the government's money is coming from and where it's all going. We're talking everything from defense and new roads to schools and hospitals. It is quite literally the economic roadmap for the entire year. And here's a really crucial point. You can't just look at this budget in a vacuum. It's not just a one-off plan for the year. No, you've got to see it as one big step on a much, much longer journey. And the North Star guiding that journey? It's this vision called Viksit Bharat. The big idea is for India to become a fully developed nation by 2047, which is its 100th anniversary of independence. So keep that in mind, because every single policy we're going to talk about today is really a brick in the wall of that massive goal. So, you have this huge goal, right? Building a developed nation. Where do you even begin? Well, according to this budget, you start with a fundamental shift in mindset. And this brings us to the first of two really huge philosophical changes we're going to explore. It's all about changing the entire relationship between the government and its citizens, especially when it comes to business and taxes. We're talking about a move away from a system that felt like policing to one that feels like a real partnership. And honestly, this image just captures the idea perfectly. On one hand, you've got the old way of doing things, that feeling of an intimidating, almost confrontational relationship, the whole us versus them vibe. But on the other side, a handshake. It's simple, but it represents this whole new vision of partnership, of collaboration, of, mutual trust. It's such a great visual for what is a really profound policy change. Okay, let's break this down a little more. You can see the difference right here. The old approach was kind of driven by fear, right? The motto was basically, penalize first, ask questions later. The new approach, it just flips that script completely. Now it's about facilitate first, and only enforce when absolutely necessary. The goal is to build a system based on trust, a system where it's just plain easier to do the right thing. And you might ask, why is this such a big deal? Well, think about it. When businesses aren't wasting all their time and energy fighting complex rules, they can focus on what they do best, innovating, growing, and creating jobs. It's about taking the friction out of the system to unlock that potential. So, this isn't just talk, right? How does this idea of trust actually show up in the policies? Well, for starters, they're decriminalizing minor tax offenses. So, a small mistake doesn't automatically make you a criminal. It's about correction, not just punishment. They're also simplifying some really complicated tax deduction stuff, giving people more time to file their returns, and even offering immunity deals to encourage people to come forward voluntarily. And for businesses, this is huge. A single digital window for clearing cargo. Just imagine. That means way less red tape and getting goods moving so much faster. All right, that was the first big shift. Now let's get to the second one, this idea of putting people over populism. And what does that mean? It means choosing to invest in people for the long haul, building up their skills and well-being, instead of just chasing short-term popular decisions for a quick political win. It's all about empowering people from the ground up. So this phrase, people-centric development, it sounds great, but what does it actually look like? What are we talking about here? Well, it's not about big, vague promises. It's about laser-focused, specific programs that are designed to make a real difference in people's daily lives. We're talking about tangible improvements in things like healthcare, support for new businesses, and social safety nets. Just look at this number, 1.5 lakh. That's 150,000. That is the number of caregivers the government is planning to train to create a brand new national care ecosystem. And that's not just a statistic, That's a massive plan to build up the entire infrastructure for taking care of the elderly. It's creating jobs and providing an absolutely essential service at the same time. And this people-first approach, it really spreads out across society. For example, they're launching something called She Marts to give a real boost to women entrepreneurs.
There are also brand new, dedicated programs for disabled persons, the Divangajan, that are focused on job training and support. And mental health is getting a huge, much-needed push with more funding for specialized institutes. The key takeaway here is that these aren't just broad stroke policies. They're designed for specific people with specific needs.
Okay, so we've got these two massive shifts, right? Trust-based governance and people-centric development. Sounds great, but this brings up the most important question of all. How do you know if it's actually working? How do you make sure that all this money being spent is making a real difference in people's lives? Well, that's where accountability comes into the picture.
And the answer has a bit of a complicated name, but the idea behind it is brilliant. It's called the Output Outcome Monitoring Framework, or OOMF for short. Now I know that's a mouthful, but it boils down to a really simple and honestly revolutionary idea. It's about shifting the focus of government away from just looking at outlays, which is basically how much money you throw at a problem, and instead focusing on outcomes. And outcomes are the real-world results, the actual impact on people's lives.
And this table just makes it crystal clear. Let's take the first example. The output, that's the what, is building 266 kilometers of new roads. Okay, great. But the outcome, the why, is that over 850,000 people are now connected. They have access they never had before. See the difference? Let's do another one. Output, 8 water supply projects are finished. The outcome? Almost 51,000 homes now have clean running water. That is the real measure of success. This whole system is designed to make government more transparent and totally focused on results. So let's step back for a second. When you put all of these pieces together, this big shift towards trust, this intense focus on people, and this commitment to actually measuring what matters, you start to see a whole new economic blueprint take shape. And it is a model that is fundamentally different from anything that's come before. Really, it all comes down to these 3 core pillars. Number 1, trust first. Move from that old policing model to a real partnership with citizens and businesses. Number 2, empower people. Don't just talk about it, directly invest in their skills, their health, their future. And number 3, measure the impact. Stop focusing on just how much money is being spent and start tracking the real-world outcomes. That's the new philosophy in a nutshell. And that brings us right back to where we began, that huge ambition of a developed India by 2047. So the big question this budget really puts on the table is this. Is this the key? Is this fundamental shift towards a government built on trust, a policy focused on people, and a system that's truly accountable for its results, is that the final piece of the puzzle that will unlock India's ambitious vision for its future?